My life will never be the same.
Gary, Indiana, August 29, 1958. Michael Joseph Jackson is born. The eighth of 10 children, at the time of Michael's birth, the family had struggled to make ends meet. Michael's mother, Katherine Jackson, raised the enormous family almost single-handedly in this tiny 672 square foot home that you can still visit today on 2300 Jackson Street. Yep, that's the real name of the street. The house had just 2 bedrooms. The sons slept in bunk beds in one of the bedrooms, and the daughters all slept in the living room. One of Michael's younger brothers, Brandon, tragically died just a few months after he was born. To make ends meet, Katherine worked part-time at Sears. Michael's father, Joe Jackson, was a former boxer and crane operator at U.S. Steel. There are many reports that Joe was abusive to his kids, both mentally and physically. Despite all that, Joe was able to convince his 3 oldest sons, Jackie, Tito, and Jermaine, to start a band in 1964. Joe had been a musician himself, having performed with his younger brother, Luther, in a blues band called the Falcons. Katherine also had a musical background, playing both piano and clarinet, and singing, by the way. Jackie, Tito, and Jermaine all sang pretty well, as it turns out, especially after Katherine helped them learn how to harmonize. Tito began playing guitar, and Jermaine began playing the bass and formed the Jackson Brothers. Joe saw their son's talent as a ticket out of poverty. He led a strict routine of rehearsing every day. Jackie, Tito, and Jermaine would often come home from school, rehearse for hours, eat dinner, do homework, and go to bed. Their incredible work ethic began to pay off, though, as they got paying gigs at places like local grocery stores. Soon, Joe realized that it would be beneficial if more of his sons joined the band. The Jacksons became the Jackson 5 after Michael and Marlon joined as singers. Michael wasn't even 6 years old yet when he began performing with his older brothers. Soon the family realized that he had the strongest voice of all the sons, and Joe made Michael the lead singer. Joe was particularly hard on Michael. Michael later recalled that his father both emotionally and physically abused him during rehearsals, sitting in a chair with a belt in his hand, ready to punish him for any mistake. Michael later also said his dad made fun of him for having a fat nose. In 1966, the Jackson 5 won their first talent show at Theodore Roosevelt High School, after Michael gave a breakout performance singing the song Barefootin' by Robert Parker. There would be many talent show wins after this. For the next 2 years, the Jackson 5 toured the Midwest, often at bars and clubs, including strip bars, apparently. More appropriately, though, they played at local auditoriums and high school dances and slowly began to get a following. On August 13, 1967, while touring the East Coast, the Jackson 5 won the weekly amateur show at Harlem's legendary Apollo Theater. On November 21, Joe was able to secure the Jackson 5's first record contract with Gordon Keith of Steeltown Records, a label based in Gary. Steeltown released the Jackson 5's debut single, Big Boy, on January 31, 1968. Michael was 9 years old when his entire family gathered around the radio to hear the song broadcast for the first time. While the single did not chart, it eventually sold more than 10,000 copies, and after that, the Jackson 5 was able to secure a deal with Motown Records. Their first single with Motown, I Want You Back, did chart. In fact, it was a huge hit worldwide, shooting up to #1 on multiple charts. The Jackson 5 performed the song on their very first national television appearances, including a notable appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show on December 14, 1969. Around that time, Michael moved in with Diana Ross for a while. Ross would become a very influential person in his life. It didn't take long before the Jackson 5 were one of the biggest musical acts in the country. In fact, some say they were the original boy band. Michael Jackson, the undeniable star of the Jackson 5 with his incredible singing talent, found himself a huge celebrity at just 11 years old. The band followed up I Want You Back with 3 more #1 hits: ABC, The Love You Save, and I'll Be There. This success led to a phenomenon known as Jackson Mania, when the Jackson 5 regularly performed to sold-out concerts around the world, and they sold tens of millions of records. Soon, the Jackson 5 became Motown's most successful act, especially with the youngins. Young girls would often rush the stage at the concerts. I wish for once we could finish a show and not have to leave before the end because of the crowds rushing the stage. We have a real good ending, but we never get the chance to do it. And while all 5 members shined, Michael was the biggest star of them all. As soon as 1971, around the time the Jacksons moved out to a large estate in Encino, California, Motown decided to launch a solo career for him. The label gathered the same team of producers who helped create songs with the Jackson 5 to record Michael's debut studio album, Gotta Be There. Motown released the album on January 24, 1972. Michael was 13 years old when he released his debut album. Gotta Be There mostly rode the success of the Jackson 5, peaking at number 14 on the Billboard 200 chart. It featured 3 notable singles: the title track, I Wanna Be Where You Are, and Michael's rendition of a previous hit, Rockin' Robin. Perhaps worried that his voice was going to get way deeper soon, dramatically changing his sound, Motown had Michael quickly record a follow-up to Gotta Be There just months after recording it. Motown released Michael's second studio album, Ben, on August 4, 1972. The title track was Michael's first #1 single as a solo artist. The album didn't do quite as well as Gotta Be There, but critics did seem to like it more. Meanwhile, Michael was still a major part of the Jackson 5 despite their waning success. Michael's brother Jermaine also had a burgeoning solo career, and by 1972, Motown was already shifting its marketing by promoting Michael and Jermaine more than the Jackson 5. Randy, Michael's only younger brother, had also started performing with the group. When Michael's older brothers began hooking up with female fans, Michael did not. The prospect of hooking up with a girl seemed to terrify him, and few folks know that he was actually quite a lonely teenager. The 2 places where he didn't seem to feel lonely, the stage and the studio. And strangely, as his speaking voice lowered, his singing voice really didn't that much. If anything, the older he got, the wider his range. It was truly a unique gift, and Motown noticed. The label got him into the recording studio for a 3rd album before his brother Jermaine. That 3rd album was Music and Me, released by Motown on April 13, 1973. It featured 3 singles: the title track, With a Child's Heart, and Happy. Yeah, even though the cover featured Michael strumming an acoustic guitar, he most definitely did not play an instrument on this album. But, his one instrument, his voice, sounded better than ever. Critics generally praised Music and Me. Over the next couple years, Michael would record 1 more album with Motown, Forever Michael, released in 1975. This album was a commercial failure, but Michael did have a hit single with We're Almost There. The Jackson 5 also released their final album with Motown, Moving Violation, in 1975. The group was growing increasingly frustrated with Motown as they felt the label was not allowing them to write or produce their own music. The group left Motown and signed with Epic Records, a subsidiary of CBS Records, in 1976. The group was forced to change their name to the Jacksons as Motown owned the name The Jackson 5. The Jacksons released their first album with Epic, The Jacksons, in 1976. The album was a commercial success featuring the hit single Enjoy Yourself. The Jacksons released a few more albums with Epic, including Going Places, 1977, and Destiny, 1978. Destiny was a huge success, featuring the hit singles Blame It on the Boogie and Shake Your Body Down to the Ground. The album was a turning point for the group, as they were finally allowed to write and produce their own music. Michael, in particular, was heavily involved in the writing and production of Destiny. The Jacksons released Triumph in 1980, which was another commercial success, featuring the hit singles Can You Feel It and Lovely One. The Jacksons released their final album, Victory, in 1984. The album was a commercial success, but the tour was plagued by internal conflicts and was the last time the six brothers ever performed together. Michael's solo career was taking off, and he was becoming one of the biggest stars in the world. In 1978, Michael starred in the film adaptation of the Broadway musical The Wiz, playing the Scarecrow. The film was a commercial failure, but Michael's performance was praised by critics. While filming The Wiz, Michael met Quincy Jones, who would become his producer and mentor. Jones produced Michael's fifth studio album, Off the Wall, released in 1979. Off the Wall was a massive commercial and critical success, featuring the hit singles Don't Stop Till You Get Enough on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. The album sold over 20 million copies worldwide and is considered one of the greatest albums of all time. Michael followed up Off the Wall with Thriller, released in 1982. Thriller was an even bigger success, becoming the best-selling album of all time, with over 66 million copies sold worldwide. The album featured 7 hit singles, including Billie Jean, Beat It, and Thriller. The music videos for Billie Jean, Beat It, and Thriller were groundbreaking and helped to establish MTV as a major force in the music industry. Thriller won a record-breaking 8 Grammy Awards in 1984, including Album of the Year. Michael followed up Thriller with Bad, released in 1987. Bad was another massive commercial and critical success, featuring 5 #1 singles, including I Just Can't Stop Loving You, Bad, and The Way You Make Me Feel. The album sold over 35 million copies worldwide. Michael followed up Bad with Dangerous, released in 1991. Dangerous was another commercial success, featuring 4 top 10 singles, including Black or White and Remember the Time. The album sold over 32 million copies worldwide. Michael followed up Dangerous with History, Past, Present, and Future, Book I, released in 1995. The album was a commercial success, featuring the hit singles Scream and You Are Not Alone. The album sold over 20 million copies worldwide. Michael followed up History with Blood on the Dance Floor, History in the Mix, released in 1997. The album was a commercial success, featuring the hit single Blood on the Dance Floor. The album sold over 6 million copies worldwide. Michael followed up Blood on the Dance Floor with Invincible, released in 2001. The album was a commercial success, featuring the hit single You Rock My World. The album sold over 13 million copies worldwide. Michael died on June 25, 2009, at the age of 50. He is considered one of the most significant cultural figures of the 20th century and one of the greatest entertainers of all time. His contributions to music, dance, and fashion, along with his publicized personal life, made him a global figure in popular culture for over 4 decades.